Hello, 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 and welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we are breaking toxic relationships in the Black community. I'm excited about today's show because this is our first duo. We are interviewing Queen P and Queen H of the Queens of Social Work. How are you doing today?
We're doing well. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I'm going to be reading a bio from both of you and let everyone know about the awesome work you're doing. So here goes. Queen P and Queen H are collectively known as the Queens of Social Work. They are New York City-based licensed clinical social workers and psychotherapists with over 30 years of combined experience in the social work field. Together, their professional experiences range throughout all levels of social work practice, from micro level, such as foster care, to meso level in healthcare, and to macro level work in program development and management. They have vast knowledge and skill sets. As Afro-Caribbean American women, they offer a unique perspective on a field that remains primarily dominated by white women, but is quickly becoming more diverse. In 2021, they created the Queens of Social Work podcast as a way to share their experiences in the field through the Afro-Caribbean female lens. The Queens of Social Work podcast is currently featured as 16 on FeedSpot's Top 40 Social Work Podcasts. Congratulations! In 2022, they released their first book, The Queens of Social Work Guide for Emergency Room Social Workers, as a reference guide to support new social workers entering the field of healthcare. In 2023, the Queens of Social Work apparel will be available online at thequeensofsocialwork.net. Whoop, whoop, amazing. Awesome. That is some good stuff. So, I don't know how we're going to start next, but what kind of got you guys together to kind of create such an amazing brand?
Again, Dr. Murray, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
What got us together, and we were saying a little bit before we started recording, but Queen H and I have known each other for the past about 7-8 years. We worked together as colleagues in a particular location and found that, working with emergencies, working with people who were in crisis, we really came to rely on each other and trust each other's intuition, as well as each other's the way in which we work, right? You've got to see somebody and how they handle their patients and how they handle certain situations. You can really say, you know what? I'm gonna rock with that person. Because there's a lot of people out here who just happen to fall into social work and aren't really truly social workers. And so Queen H and I got together. We just started working, and the rest is history. We just released 2 journals in August for Minority Business Month. So we're continuing on this journey, and we're trying to do more for the community.
Awesome. Amazing. So tell me about these journals now. What is it for, the business person, or is it for the person in healing?
It's for anyone who wants to purchase, anyone who is a writer. I happen to be a writer. Queen H is not a writer. Okay. So the journals are tools that I use. One is interactive. It has particular prompts. And the other is just just pages for people to create whatever is on their heart, to write out, to manifest, So the other one is just a journal for people to use how they see fit. And the other is more interactive.
Nice. Okay. That is great. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. And we're going to make sure, and I mentioned this earlier, but that we're going to have links. So we're going to put that in the show notes, because I'm sure our guests would love to get their hands on that journal.
Yes, thank you.
Very welcome. So today's topic is so incredibly important. So we're going to be talking about domestic violence in the Black community. And I just thought that was so relevant because, you all work in the emergency room or in emergency situations. And I know even from my experience, just growing up, and I remember trying to think, I was observing a family conflict. That's what they would call it, a family conflict. And it was dangerous. And I just remember wanting to intervene, in fact, trying to intervene, and being told that that was their business. And feeling extremely confused, extremely afraid, not really knowing in my heart, this is more than just a family issue. And even if it is a family issue, it's not an okay family issue. But at the same time, realizing my hands were tied, like I couldn't do anything. So can you tell me, can you kind of speak to like what you all see with domestic violence? What makes it dangerous? What makes it emergency? Is it an emergency? Fill in the gaps. Y'all are the experts here.
Okay, so, domestic violence is such a nuanced topic, but it's something that's pervasive among all cultures, of course. I think there has been a stereotype perpetuated that only Black and brown communities face domestic violence, but we know that all communities face it.
Absolutely.
And part of that is because the dynamics of domestic violence have to do with power and control, right? The abuser wants to have power and control over the person who they're abusing. And so for many people across socioeconomic backgrounds, this can happen. Some people only think it's poor people, but yes, it happens with rich people, right? Because there's different types of domestic violence, right? There is verbal abuse, there is physical abuse, there is sexual abuse, there's financial abuse, and there's even spiritual abuse. And so I think people don't understand when it's happening to them at the time, and sometimes it starts off as a quote unquote small thing, right? It may be just commenting about what you're wearing, and then now you're changing, what you're wearing. It can be isolating you from your family, and then next thing you know, it can become physical, or it can become, extremely verbally and psychologically and emotionally abusive. It can be using religion to control the person, and people don't realize that can happen. And then the financial abuse, telling you not to work, right, so that they have control over the money. You can't go anywhere now. You are in their grasp, or in their control. And so understanding those certain dynamics, or the fact that it can be so many things, and people are not aware of it, it's so important that we put the education out there, so that people are aware that it shows up in many different ways, and that it is not the person who is being abused. It's not their fault that this is happening, but there are resources out there to get help, to understand the dynamics, and to ensure that you see those kind of characteristics in the next partner that you choose. So you know how to say, okay, well, this reminds me of this. Let me not get into this kind of relationship, because we know that the abuser, what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a very good summary of kind of what I've seen as well. I'm trying to think. We're Black people, okay? And we tend to express ourselves more in the artistic ways. How do we know the difference between when does it become abusive? And one of the things too, I think it was Queen P who was talking, you mentioned so many different areas of abuse. So is there one that is more abusive than another, or are they all kind of like the same? And then where does it go from, okay, this is just the way we are, to, okay, this is a problem, this is an emergency?
So that was Queen H who was speaking previous.
Right. Okay.
So I think that, and you know, Queen H always has the best answers, but the way in which we know that you're being abused is the way in which it impacts your life, right? Are you hurt? Do you feel pain? What is your body telling you, right? And again, it's not just physical, but our mind is connected to our body, even when it's financial abuse. Does that make sense? Limiting what you can buy, if you can't buy anything at all, you know, you're relying on this particular individual for your financial well-being, your financial future. I mean, it looks and feels different for each type of abuse. So you would know what you're experiencing based on how it feels to you, right? Some people would say, okay, he got off on that one hit. And of course, for the sake of argument, obviously the media has given us this narrative that domestic violence is primarily from male to female partner, right? We talk about domestic violence in the context of it being intimate partner violence. We don't really talk about domestic violence in terms of mother, daughter, father, son, aunt, uncle. You know, we don't really look at it in that context. So we're going to, for the purposes of this episode, we're going to talk about it in that way, male, female, and within intimate partner relationships. So we're getting to, let's say a male hitting a female, and then she says, okay, well, you got that first hit, blah, 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 right? But if you do it again, I'm going to call the cops. If you do it again, I'm going to do something else, you know, in response to that. And so for that person, that may be it. The first hit ain't too bad. The second one might be a problem. Now it's abuse. Now it's escalated. Now we're at a place where I didn't expect it to go, and we need to do something to interrupt this pattern before it goes further. You know, for someone else, it may be, wow, you know, I was working 2 months ago. Now I'm not working. Now I have to depend on you, and you're not giving me the money that I need to pay my bills, to, you know, purchase whatever it is I need to purchase, right? Pay my health insurance. And so now this may be a problem for them, but 2 months ago it wasn't. So, you know, I think it's how it feels, how you experience it, that will determine what you want to do next, how you want to respond to it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, well, I think that's the best, probably the best answer to that question I've ever heard, because, you know, I think a lot of times we have this like 100% rule, like if he ever does X, Y, Z, then just whatever. And I'm not like, domestic violence is wrong, hands down, shouldn't happen. It's not right. There's nothing okay about it. But one of the things that you mentioned, and I think is very important, is domestic violence just doesn't happen in couples. A lot of times it happens in our family systems, between mom and dad, between mom and daughter, between siblings, grandparent, whatever. A lot of times we don't even know. And so just as women are also learning, or whoever the victim is in the circumstances is learning about domestic violence, sometimes the offender is as well. And I believe in, you know, my faith, I'm very transparent about that. I do believe that people have the right to learn from their mistakes. But you're right, you know, when it reaches a point of, okay, this is intolerable, this is not going to end. And I guess that's important to make that distinction, because a lot of times, and I know that you all are protective over where you work, but I know I've done a little bit of work in like the emergency room and stuff. And a lot of times when it gets there, it's like, yo, somebody has shot somebody, or, you know, somebody's trying to kill. Like, that's way too far. So thank you for clarifying. It's that point where, you know, enough is enough, basically. That was a really great explanation. What kind of linkages have you seen between people who've grown up in domestic violence versus people who, again, find themselves in relationships where there's domestic violence?
So I know Queen P talks about my answer, but I think her answers are always so eloquent, and so
you're both amazing.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes. that is our dynamic. We're always strength-based and always bigging each other up and other people up. So thank you.
Yes, amazing. Yeah. As Black women, we need to do that more. So thank you all. modeling.
Exactly. And again, thank you for having us here.
Absolutely.
So I think it's not just the linkages that we've seen. I think, there's research that proves that young people who grow up in families with domestic violence, right? They're impacted in different ways, and how they display that is either one, they may too become an abuser, right? And it's not really a numbers thing. We're talking about an experience thing, right? Mm-hmm. But they too may become an abuser. They also run the risk of becoming abused, right? Or they run the risk of other mental health issues, right? And so we know that if children grow up in this type of setting, it impacts them. They don't understand healthy relationship and dynamics, right? And for much of our work, because we worked in other sectors of social work, and for instance, child welfare, many of the kids that I've worked with come from an abusive or neglectful situation, whether it's that they grew up watching this or they have been the bearers of it, right? And so one of the things that has been prevalent is that they need to have therapy to be able to understand what a healthy relationship, a loving relationship is, whether it is with a partner, whether it is with a friend, whether it's with another relative, because even that dynamic with seeing their parents in that situation disrupts all relationship, because they don't see that, it's not okay to hit. It's not okay to say stupid or call someone a name in an argument. You see that dynamic with people. And so it's just like, I just argued and I just, called this person a name, and, that's how they were acting, and feel justified in thinking that's okay. But we know that is abusive. The language is abusive.
Please elaborate on that, because you used the word justified. People, we, and all of us, it's in all communities, but a lot of, that's what I mean, because we're more expressive, I think, and we feel that if we have been violated, it's almost like all bets are off. Like, you wouldn't treat me this way if you didn't think I violated you, so why are you treating me this way now that you think that I violated you? Like, help to kind of clear that up a little bit. Like,
yeah, I think if we're talking Black people in specific, right, we know generationally we've been through a lot of trauma, right? And it's so cliche to say this, hurt people, but it is the truth, right? We see, was just having this conversation at work about, parents who were raised by grandparents and not their own parent, but because their parent experienced trauma and was doing whatever out there trying to figure themselves out. But then that impacts the child, right? That impacts the child because they're not raised by their parent. Their parent may not know how to speak to them, may not know how to relate to them. And so then what happens? That passes on. And so we have to make a conscious effort and decision to decide, okay, how we're going to be, right? So if someone comes from this wounded place and they're having a disagreement, or a person feels slighted in some way, they feel justified in retaliation and in some kind of way, right? And we know that that's not true, because our perception of what someone says doesn't mean that that's what's happening. Right? Yeah.
Half the time people don't even mean to offend you.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting at the root of why they offended you, you justified. Exactly. How much of a role do you think the media plays on this? Because my son is 4. He has autism. He's high functioning autism, but he has been diagnosed with autism. And he was going over his emotions and his feelings. And when he goes angry, like that. And I don't know I do know what show, but I don't want to reference the show here, but I know where he got it from. And it's like they're teaching him that to be angry, you have to be like this, like in your expression. And I mean, I know that they're trying to educate him and let him know what it means to be angry, but especially with him being a little Black boy with autism, with socially, emotionally challenging thoughts. Anyway, I shouldn't say challenging thoughts. Just he doesn't process information the way a lot of children do. I was really bothered by that, because I said, you're teaching my Black child that anger and aggression are the same things, and they're not.
Absolutely right. I think that, and we talk a lot on our show about the media, and I'm usually the one who brings it up. Because there's a lot out here, and it's important that it's unfortunate that we're in a experience and we're in a lifetime where filters are just not, we're lacking social cues because we don't interact with people as much as we interact with our screens. Mm-hmm. So we're missing social cues, we're missing grace, we're missing mistakes, we're missing humanness and that human connection, because we're expecting everybody to be perfect. Everyone posts the perfect pictures, right?
Yes.
So right? People don't show pictures of them, struggling and going through, like, girl, how am I gonna pay my bills next month? You don't really see that, right?
Right.
So, you get this image that everything is perfect, everyone is perfect, everyone is great, nipped, tucked, sucked in, everything is, this particular way. And so for a crisis like domestic violence, mm-hmm. You don't see that often. When we did see it, it was Rihanna and Chris Brown several years ago. And then I haven't seen, but also I'm not in these streets like I used to be, so I wouldn't know if there was something else that popped out, but even then it was a very it was her experience. It was very tailored as well, right? Because it has to be palatable. Mm-hmm. There were people, like Trump say, on both sides.
I'm sorry, can you break that down, what you mean? Because you lost me. I know you might have lost other people.
So what I mean is, and you know what? A recent one, Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez.
Oh yeah,
right?
that is. Yeah.
This young man shot her in the foot, I believe. Shot her.
Yeah, I don't know.
And people were coming out, and when I say on both sides, I mean people were coming out for Megan and against Megan, for Tory and against Tory, and there was a lot of media that was criticizing Megan for her sexual history, for being involved with this person intimately, and completely overlooking the fact that she was the victim of a crime.
Yes.
Right? Like her experience just did not matter. Didn't matter at all.
Right.
There were all these lies and backstories and people trying to cover things up, and I'm not even clear what the story is because there was so much going on at the time. But I say that to say that because we're lacking certain things in this time, domestic violence looks a particular way, right? And like Queen H said, it's never a survivor's fault that they've experienced this hurt, this trauma, this grief. It's never their fault that they've been abused, that they're being abused, that they're in this situation. People stay in unsafe relationships for various reasons, and it's not our position to judge anyone for whatever reason they may be staying in any particular situation. And we all know that, like we said before, when people have had enough, they have enough. But I do think that social media plays a role in just minimizing and misconstruing the nuances of human connectedness, and that is the issue sometimes, where it comes to looking at what are we really seeing on the screen. Was she really shot, or did she make it up? Because that came out too, like, oh no, it's not what happened, someone pulled a gun, someone didn't pull a gun, someone, it went off on accident. Like, come on. So that's my answer to the question you asked about social media and how it impacts this level of violence, and I think that's it. The nuances get missed.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned those two scenarios. I can't believe Megan Thee Stallion was a delayed reaction for either one of us. But like you, I don't be in the streets like that either.
Right?
But speaking of the media, and this is, I don't want to take it too far away, but I am interested in your perspective on, in both of these scenarios, in some way, shape, or form, both Megan Thee Stallion and Rihanna got blamed. But when we have our black men in the streets getting shot by the police, we always are defending them. Are either of you comfortable on taking that up as to why it seems like as black women, we're up here constantly having to defend ourselves, even against our own men? And then when we have these black men in the streets getting shot by them, it's a no-brainer. Like we always come to their aid. Like I don't think I've heard. Well, I've heard of some real right-wing people kind of maybe blame these black men, but overall, there's not like this back and forth about black men getting shot by the police.
Sorry.
Okay. I was like, I know that it wasn't quite on subject, so I was like, I don't know if it just answer it.
No. I think it's a little dense, and to even try to address here, and I think it requires a little bit more, right? I think social media adds to this rhetoric that there are no black men defending black women. I think there are black men defending black women, but I do think it's not enough, and we know that it's an issue, but I think it's a lot more to it, and I don't know if we have time to unpack that, right? It's a lot to unpack in that. I think overall, right, at the end of the day, as black people, we need to defend each other, right? And be there to support and unite and come together. I think we have to be honest about the experiences that we have with each other, but also know that we are in this struggle together, regardless of what we feel isn't or isn't happening, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you defend me or not, I'm still going to experience the microaggression at work. I'm still going to be shot in the street as well. So I think, that's what I'm saying. It's a lot.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah,
right.
It's
right.
a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I think when it comes to the subject at hand and domestic violence and just in the community, I think the biggest thing is what Queen P say is that it's not to judge, right? Because I think we've heard people say, oh, well, she's dumb or he's dumb for being in that relationship because this is happening. But no one knows what they're going to do until it happens to them, right? Mm-hmm. And so we need to have spaces of being very open and non-judgmental and be willing to help and have the information and the resources to know and support, because the most dangerous time for a person in especially a physically abusive relationship, I mean, it can happen and emotionally be abusive because it can escalate, but the most dangerous time is when the person who's being abused leaves.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That is where you get the shot, someone being shot or wherever, because of that power and control dynamic. You are mine, you will not go anywhere, right? And so that happens whether it's emotionally abusive or it could have never been physical, right? And this person has escalated because you are mine. Right, I need to see you at all times. I need to know where you're, at. I need to have control over you. And once I can't have control over you, then guess what? Nobody else can do that.
Right.
And so I think being mindful of that, and so that's why the judgment has to go out of the window, and the love and support has to be there, and the information has to be there, and having spaces where these people can go and hide and can go to start anew if they decide to leave, and having the resources and understanding that, you know, do not give the other person the number. It's not cute. It's not any of this. Oh, this person really loves you, that's why they're coming after you. All of these things. I think, you know, we missed a couple that may be in this situation too. They're you guys' ears are not to the street, but my ears are always to the street in some shape or form. And so one of them, the newest things, I guess, you know, more popular thing is Krishan and Blueface, and the dynamic that they have, and that's been perpetuated by social media, and almost they continue to report on this relationship that is clearly abusive in many ways, not just physically but emotionally and financially, and almost glamorizing it in a way, and making, like, sending a message like, oh, if he loves you, this is what's going to happen, or if she loves you, she's going to attach your face on her neck, on her face, on this and that. And we know that is not true, right? And so just having that education out there and knowing when to really support, or at least give the information to someone that's in this relationship, and being patient, because it takes many times of the person trying to leave before they actually leave.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such an unfortunate issue, and it's complicated, and it's so convoluted. And you're right, we have such long-standing parts of the trauma that we've been through that contributes to this. You know, with I know you all are Afro-Caribbean heritage. My husband is Ghanaian, West African. And one of the things I really like about the really strong African cultural piece is, one, family, but also their engagement in, like, the creative arts. Like, I just find creativity just being this in abundance, and I think it's everywhere, but when we came to the Western world, we've been kind of taught to bring that down. And sometimes I wonder if, in terms of survival, and I'm talking about all the way back to the transatlantic slave trade, if we lost the ability to communicate, or, you know, our natural skills that let us communicate in a healthy way. Now we're struggling with, okay, well, my African roots tell me, you know, that I can maybe move, or, you know, speak a certain way, but now I have to conform to this European way, and that's not natural for me, and I'm angry about it, and, you know, I can't beat the master, so you know what I mean, where can I get some control? You know, I'm just wondering. And then, you know, a lot of our people talk about that like that was so long ago. Really wasn't, you know. And a lot of us are, you know, if your grandparents, if you saw how they interacted and that type of stuff, then there you have it. You know, you pretty much seen these dynamics play out.
I understand what you mean. I think that we have absolutely not lost the ability to communicate. I think communication has changed because it looks a lot different, right? I think that there are so many ways to communicate. Silence is a form of communication, right? There's all this technology, there's writing, there's text, there's also being connected with someone, being so connected that sometimes words are useless. Because you know where that person stands, you know what that person needs, you know what they mean, you know what they're saying, just by looking at them, right? We communicate with our bodies through our experiences. And so I don't think we've lost that at all. I do think, though, that when we talk about the context of domestic violence, you can end up in a relationship and not realize how you got there, right? And so I think that, and that is with all the communication in the world and all the experiences, you can find yourself in a situation one day and you're like, wait, what? How did we even, you know, after years of being together, you know, like Queen H said, you know, the most dangerous time to experience domestic violence or be in a relationship is when you try to leave, because now the abuser feels like they don't have control of the situation, and then they're trying to maintain control, and so that's when they tend to escalate. But I would say this, in terms of communication and domestic violence, it's always important, if you've experienced domestic violence, that you think about a safety plan, right? If you think that you find yourself in a relationship that does not feel safe to you, and you feel like you're being abused or have experienced abuse, and you want to implement a plan to exit the relationship, then you have to be smart. You have to educate yourself. Queen H has said that multiple times. There's resources out there, there's information, there's knowledge, and there are people who you can trust. Sometimes those people who you can trust are outside of your immediate circle.
Oh yeah.
And you have to be right, and you have to be open to that too. Because he can access your mom, he can access your auntie, your grandma. Your partner can access people who are closest to you. So maybe sometimes it's safer to go outside of that. So really think about planning and come up with something that that you can communicate to someone to help save your life and to keep you safe.
Amazing. And I just would like to add to that, sometimes if you can't find the strength to do it for yourself, do it for your children. Because one thing I think we are all agreeing on is this is a generational thing. And if you see it in your parents and you in a relationship, now your kids seeing it, they're going to be in a relationship that does that. So you have to make sure that we are modeling the behavior that we want for our children to have.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to be respectful of you all's time. Domestic violence, we could talk about this for a week and still not cover everything that there is to cover. Is there a final thought? If there's one thing that you want our audience to take from tonight's episode, what would that be?
So a final thought is really about how can we create community and wrap our arms around those who are in some of these situations with free of judgment, with lots of love and support and understanding. And understanding that if you don't know where to go to get help, you can go to the emergency room. You can go to the hospital itself, because there's always a social work department. If you're scared to go to a police department. So there are resources in the community that you would not believe that can support you. And so to really try to get yourself to a social worker is important, because that's what social work does, right? Links with resources that are in the community that can support you and help you develop a plan that's safe for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So we know that you all are in New York. I don't get the idea that you all are in private practice, but just clarify that. Can clients work with you in private practice or in any other capacity?
When it comes to podcasting right now, that's what we're doing. We keep both kind of separate. So we do have clients in private practice, but we get those through other means and other sources, and then we have our hands in various pots.
Got it. Well, yes. You have those books. You have 2 journals and a book. So please, like I said, you can look in the resources. Also, we're going to make sure that we get a link to your podcast, because I'd love for our audience to share share our audience members with you, so they can see the amazing things that you all are talking about and doing over there. So that's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I made sure to send it to you. So I sent the link tree, and it has links directly to the journals, to the book, and to the podcast, so that they can find it. Yes, and we're wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best of luck. You all are amazing guests to host. You all are doing such great work. You bring a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just so grateful to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, that concludes our episode for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Queen H and Queen P and Dr. O. Thanks for joining us. Peace and blessings, Dr. O.
Thank you for having us. This was great.
Awesome. I don't want to, I'm going to have to tell my editor. I think it's still recording. Okay, pause, stop.